Hi. Welcome to TableTalk Friday, a D&D podcast. Three guys are going to talk to each other and give their advice and opinions on Dungeons and Dragons and whatnot. If you like the show, make sure to follow them on whichever podcast service you prefer and come back every single Friday for another upload or episode, whatever you prefer to call it. Have fun, I guess. Bye. Yeah, ta-ta. Bye. See ya. Bye. Bye. Whew. All right, gang. Welcome to Table Talk Friday. My name is Seth Pittman. I'm joined by my two friends, Zachary Carvana and Andrew Romano. How are you boys doing this week?
Feeling pretty good. I think my head's kind of stuck in space right now with the topic we're about to go into, but feeling pretty good.
I'm just taken aback by that comment. I'm doing great. We've got a lot to cover on this week because we're talking about Spelljammer.
Which is why this week, again, I don't have any crazy cold open topics because we have so much to go through. Last week, we went through one D&D, which was insane, very long episode, and I expect just the same here from Spelljammer. There is so much to go over with these three compiled books that we've gotten along with in this one Spelljammer collection: the Astral's Adventure Guide, Boo's Monster Menagerie. Is that it?
Astral
Menagerie. Yeah, and then the Light of Xerxes, which that's how I'm reading it. I've heard like a bunch of different DMs to call it like different names. Exarices. No, I read it as Light of Xerxes. That's what makes sense in my head, or Zarisis or something like that. I like it. I think it sounds cool that way. So Spelljammer, it's D&D, fantasy in space. You know, two of my favorite things are sci-fi and fantasy. I love me some fantasy, like RPGs. I love the Mass Effect series. So taking those two things, putting them in one with my favorite hobby, Dungeons and Dragons, just, you know, a lot of my favorite loves all put into one. Spelljammer originally came out, I believe, in 2nd edition, was when they first introduced it. And there was all kinds of cool material surrounding it. There was fan-made material. There were a couple of modules that went along with it. I've only read bits and pieces of some 2nd edition modules, but it was this big culture-changing deal for D&D. And their first module, I think, was 1991, the Dark Fist or something like that. I don't know. It was pretty cool. But upon looking at all of this new Spelljammer stuff that we've gotten, I have a whole lot of thoughts about it, but I've already decided we're running our next campaign in Spelljammer, so no better time to talk about it than now. What are your guys' thoughts on just briefly looking at the scene, the setup we have so far? Not a whole lot of details yet.
Yeah, so just in general, I agree. I think that the idea of D&D in space, those two things go together amazingly, and specifically the direction that they're approaching this from is sort of like, you know, you think back to, 50s are like, we haven't even gone to the moon yet, so like we don't know if there's like things out there. So it's, you know, people going into space without a space helmet, and, you know, Flash Gordon and all of that, just very iconic space fantasy imagery that makes for a very like pulpy, cheesy, just interesting space-time. So, like, you're going and talking to aliens who, you know, their names are Glorb and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It just seems like the perfect match for a campaign that goes from, you know, medieval fantasy to the stars, and, you know, works in tandem with features that talk about, you know, casting fireball spells and wielding a greatsword and, you know, all that jazz. There
is a... no spoilers, but there is a GIF in the book with the best written name I've seen in D&D, and it's so funny cereal boxy that I'm like, that's so perfect.
So I'm gonna say I am absolutely lost with all this space stuff. There's so much going on. There's so much I want to explore. The idea that there is an entire new setting that I'm about to go into that has different planets and space stuff and ships, like actual floating ships through space, all these new races, we have new classes, new spells. There's so many places I haven't seen in just the Forgotten Realms. I still haven't played a paladin, guys. Like, there's so many things I need to do, and we're launching ourselves into space to see more stuff. So I'm super excited, super stoked about it, but there's so much stuff. Oh my goodness, I don't know.
Well, and yeah, that's kind of the thing with it is, sometimes, you play high fantasy for 4 years in a row and they say, hey, you can also do this in space for a little bit. And I'm like, oh man, that sounds like a lot of fun. And believe me, it's not nearly as complicated as you think it is. Now, let's start off with the Astral Adventurer's Guide, probably the key book in this set. The Astral Adventurer's Guide is more or less a space traveling manual. And I'm indifferent about it. We get a whole lot. We get the base rules of wild space, which is what the space around your specific section is called. So your specific like little universe pocket almost is your wild space.
Yeah,
surrounding.
If you think about space in the real world, the way that I like to think of a wild space system is like a solar system. It's, this collection of planets that revolves around this sun, and there's, space beyond
I think of
that.
it more as like a galaxy because of the size they reference it as.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, even like the Milky Way. The Milky Way is an equivalent size to a wild space system.
So between these wild spaces is the astral sea. So in the astral sea, you have just this white, milky, hazy space where time doesn't really pass. Things don't age. Things go and die. Gods live here. This might be the space where you would get lost in for just an eternity. This is the space where you would go and you would never find the end and you would lose your mind slowly. And you're everybody here, the reason it's called, what you were going to say something, Zach, before I continue?
Yeah. Well, so if we think of, so there's wild space and the astral sea, and those two things together make up what we formerly would call altogether the astral plane.
The astral plane, exactly.
And so the reason for this distinction is they both work in sort of weird ways. So it's important to say, okay, well, a wild space system is a lot more like what you'd expect in like your sci-fi, your Star Wars. There's different planets attached, but then there's also all the weird trappings of the astral plane that we think about, where you cast astral projection and you're tied by like a silvery cord and you're floating through infinite nothingness, propelled by your mind basically, while you're in this space. Time doesn't pass. You don't age. I don't believe you need to eat or anything. It's like the space between everything else. That's the astral sea.
Right. So I would say, if you're casting astral projection, you're going to the astral sea where, you quite literally you're propelled by your thoughts, which takes me to the kind of crux of our space travel. We do not have rockets or spaceships or jetpacks or anything like that. What we have are spelljammers, or in spelljamming ships.
Yeah, spelljamming vessels. Yeah, because a spelljammer is a spellcaster.
Correct.
Who helms a spelljamming vessel.
So right, spelljamming vessels are these ships by which a spelljamming helm is created on, and these can now basically just sail into space. An atmosphere is built around these in the form of like air pockets. Don't need to go over like the intense details on that. And the Spelljammer is the captain of said ship. Now, the Spelljammer is more or less the captain. You sit there. It has to be a spellcaster of some sort, and their body is overtaken with this almost tingling sensation. Professional Spelljammers can quite literally feel what's coming up next. Whereas whenever you are captaining your boat, where we all know that space is pretty much a very large void, at which, when we see typical space travel in movies and such, the stars disappear beyond the horizon, wormholes open up and whatnot. Your spelljamming ships can do much the same. They have more or less their flying speed, their sailing mode, where you are in the vicinity and going at a specific speed, like in Star Wars. And then they have their hyperspace jumps, where hundreds of thousand miles per hour, your spelljamming ship is flinging itself. And it has a arcane knowledge about it, where whenever it is blocked off by something large, whether it be another ship, a planet, a flock of enemies, the spelljamming ship knows to tell the spelljammer to stop. So,
which is very much like the rules that are established in Star Wars. Like, you look for a route for your hyperspace jump, but obviously you can't do a light speed jump into another target, unless it's your intention to crash right into them.
Correct.
Which there are rules for crashing your spelljamming vessel as well. But so the idea is, these ships are capable of traveling, it's like 100 million miles in 24 hours.
I think it's 100,000 or no, it's 100,000 an hour or something like that. Yeah, it gives you a very large number.
I believe it's 100 I need to find it, but it's 100 million miles in a 24-hour period.
Okay. Gotcha.
That it can travel. But if you're ever on course to run into something, then you stop more or less at a certain distance away, determined by the DM, and then while you're in the vicinity of this thing, you move at your ship's flying speed. So somewhere between 30 feet and I think the fastest ships are like 70, 90 feet
right
per round.
So very interesting stuff. Love the space travel. Love the planes of gravity and how they work. I don't want to go too in depth on rules. I more so want to talk about like what's here in the context of the context of the book for us. Drew, I know you're getting all of this, fresh off the presses. What are your thoughts and questions you have so far as a person who hasn't heard any of this yet?
So I have a hell of a question right now. You just said that mages can pilot these things, right? They're spelljammers, correct?
Yes.
Do I need to play a sorcerer or something in this upcoming campaign to pilot these?
Anybody who can cast spells, anybody with spellcasting ability can be the spelljammer.
Yeah, so it's not explicitly defined here, but I would say like if you're a class that has the spellcasting feature, so paladins, clerics, druids included, then you can, artificers even, you can man one of these. But if you're a character incapable of casting any spells, I'd say even the magic initiate feat would be enough.
Right, so you can pilot these boats, but experience is a play. Like, you need to have proficiency to do it effectively. The most experienced pilots can tell almost whether they're being blocked off by a large asteroid or a flock of vampires flying by. Like, and
Vampires.
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, we'll get that in the monster manual section, but. Yeah, so there's really cool lore involved with it where, they can almost sense it, the tingling, they feel different. They can't really describe why, but they know they're being blocked out by something specific. So if, say, you guys are piloting a spelljammer, or you guys are spelljamming for the first time, then, okay, you don't really know what this is like yet, but by the end of your, 5 or 6 level adventure, you might actually have a feel for it, which is cool. It's a cool way to build experience, and you can have experience with vehicles piloting actual spelljamming or being a spelljammer.
Yeah,
very interesting.
They also have included, say, if you're an all non-magic party, you can also hire a spelljammer to steer your ship for you, and which I think might be sort of a valid way to run some of this combat, because as far as I understand, the spelljammer, while you're controlling the ship, which is using a magic item called a spelljamming helm. Which basically you have to have the helm in order to operate the ship. You have to keep your concentration on operating the ship. So if you want to cast any spells that require concentration, then you can't essentially and control the ship at the same time. So you have to choose between those things. You also have to be attuned to the spelljamming helm like a magic item, and so that's sort of your function on the ship is going to be to control the direction that you're headed. You might be able to, cast some non-concentration spells just to, provide covering fire. But your job as the spelljammer is to control the ship mostly.
That is so cool. I want to pilot one now. If I have to take one level in some sort of mage, I might do it just so I could pilot this thing.
And speaking on Light of Xerxes a little bit, the module that we've been provided here with Spelljammer, they do provide some good context, I would say, having skimmed most of it at this point. They provide some good context and NPCs and stuff that make the combat more interesting, and so that the players actually have freedom to do what they want, whether it's being the Spelljammer or not. Furthermore, in the Astral Adventurer's Guide, we have, before we get to the order of the book, Zach, before we get to the actual ships and whatnot, what do we have before that point? Do we have the actual...
player options?
Yeah, player options, section of Wild Space. What do we get provided before that?
Yeah, pretty much everything that we've covered about how space works. So... a lot of sort of your deeper questions about, well, how does gravity work? How does air work?
They're answered.
It's answered, but a lot of it is sort of hand waved in a way that says, well, no, you don't need to make complex mathematical calculations. Basically, if you've ever played a Mario game where you can turn the gravity to go up or down, that's about as complex as it gets. If you pass through the line where you'd now be below the ship, you fall directly down. If you pass that line, then gravity switches, and now you're fall back up in the other direction.
Right. And if you pass a space with a more with a gravity field of its own, your gravity field is subdued to more or less the standard for that space. So say you head into a planet's atmosphere for the first time, your gravity well is like subdued, and now you stand on the ship as you would normally.
Yeah, and say if you're a medium creature and you're free flying through space, maybe you're wearing a fish suit, which is like a special magic item. It's just a space suit.
It's a space suit.
Lets you breathe in space.
It's a fish suit?
It's called a fish suit because space fishing is a big deal.
Yeah, there's a picture of it here. You also kind of look like a fish.
And, you're an astronaut, or like in a diver suit. It's cool. It's fun.
Yeah, 100%. But you'd be pulled in by whatever gravitational pull of like a larger thing. So say if you're two creatures floating through space infinitely, one of you small, one of you's large. The small creature would be beholden to the larger creature's space. Similarly, if you're two ships, the smaller ship would be beholden to the larger ship's gravity, that sort of thing.
But not until the two ships touch.
Yeah.
And when the two ships touch, that's whenever their fields combine. So if, say, someone is walking on the underside of your ship, because that's across your gravitational plane, correct? If someone is walking on the underside of your ship and another ship that's larger touches it, now it's beholden to that one's gravity plane, and they either can go higher or if that one hits that area and then like turns over or something like that, they fall. It's very interesting and very different, and it's a little mind-boggling since we always operate on the one plane, but it's interesting enough.
Yeah, additionally, every spelljamming vessel, and the reason why to even use these in the first place is they each have an air pocket, or air envelope is what they call it, which is just the space around you that's filled with air. All things have an air envelope, so if you fly directly into space, you will have your own, but it runs out incredibly quickly. So like a creature free flying through space will run out of air in around a minute's time, but a spelljamming vessel has enough air for you to travel for weeks before needing to refill at a larger pocket of air to replenish the supply.
So is this bubble, is it magical, or is it more so like the oxygen in your body surrounds you and keeps you going? Like, are you holding your breath here?
No.
Everything has like a small atmosphere is the best way to think of
the way
it.
that
But it is magical.
Yeah, it's basically magic. So magic basically creates a small atmosphere around everything, every object, so that way when you go out into wild space, everything's not dead. It's basically a way of saying like you're outdoors in space and you're not dying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Additionally, one of the important distinctions between wild space and the astral sea is you don't need to breathe air. Or in the astral sea, you would not suffocate, and there's no need to breathe in order to survive.
But in wild space, you do.
Yes.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So in the astral sea, you may be breathing, but is that you breathing, or is it the astral sea projecting into your mind that you still need to breathe?
Oh, I don't like that.
So you don't actually need to eat or drink anything, but do you feel a little hungry based on how your current mental state is? Maybe.
So the whole environment is like, it's messing with you here?
Yeah.
Yeah, the astral sea is basically a never-ending abyss, like open space would be if you were just floating around in it, except the astral sea is magical in nature. You don't age. Time doesn't really pass the same way, and wild space is more or less like our space.
Okay, so tying this into combat then, I'm thinking, normal combat is you're on a flat surface, normal gravity, and you're, hitting one another over and over again, right? We could change that setting to, regular old boats where you have to worry about the environmental hazard of falling overboard or, falling out of the crow's nest, things like that, right? How do we need to be worried about this? Do we have to worry about this air while we're fighting people? Are we going to get, thrown off in astral space? Is this gravity going to be throwing us around? Like, are we going to get rammed so the gravity changes? How does this impact everything?
So while, if you were to leap overboard your ship, you'll be impacted by its gravity well. Essentially, the space around the ship equals the longest length of the ship. So if your ship is 70 feet long from its longest point, then surrounding you will be a field of air 70 feet wide in any direction, and then you're affected by that gravity in that space. While you are separate from the ship, you are somewhat tethered to it. So you will be able to like float around outside of the ship, with the caveat that you will slowly drift backward. I believe it's you go back 5 feet or every 10 minutes or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So you couldn't like leap off the ship and just stay there indefinitely. You will eventually fall out of the ship's pull, and then at that point you'll just, like real space, you'll continue traveling in the same direction until acted upon by another force.
Okay.
And once you hit the midpoint of said gravity field, you will turn over and go back the other way. So say you're on your ship, right? You leap overboard. Once you hit the halfway point of said ship, you turn back over and come back up, and then you turn back over and go back down. So you can basically fall up and down forever, more or less flying in a direction, kind of.
Okay.
But likewise, big ship comes at you from below and intercepts you like this. Now your whole ship is beholden to this one's gravity plane. So your ship starts to fall back and forth right here because it's facing upwards, and everybody inside and all your gear and stuff also starts to shift on their gravity plane. So it's very fun, it's very whimsical, and that's something I wanted to get into next. While I don't want to get into every tiny little all the tiny little minute details, what I want to say is I love the tone of these books. It's very Flash Gordon, which the Light of Xerxes is based on, is the tone and mood of the old Flash Gordon movies. And then on top of that, it feels very Guardians of the Galaxy, just fun, chills, as less Star Trek and Star Wars, more Guardians of the Galaxy, Flash Gordon, those like more quippy, fun, zany events that would be going on, and I absolutely love it. That's the kind of the mood I wanted to go for, and that I feel I didn't want to have a serious sci-fi adventure. While you will run into some very serious conflict that's going on, like world-ending stakes and whatnot, it's still just the whole time feels whimsical, and that's what's nice about it, is you guys can have just a fun adventure in space.
Yeah, so a lot of the minute details are sort of hand-waved, like how does your ship control? It's more or less like a boat, and you just sort of go with it. But you could travel theoretically in like any direction in space. So you could say if you wanted to aim all your weapons at the separate ship, you could position your ship in such a way where all the weapons are like
able to face up or something.
Yeah, exactly. So you could be fighting in 3-dimensional space, just to the point where it's still fun. Obviously, there's a certain aspect of D&D where everything exists on a 2D plane, at least in a tabletop setting where 3-dimensionality might come into play, and you just sort of have to go with it.
I think I love the idea of having this ship-to-ship Z-axis combat too, though, where, okay, we're trying to maneuver our ship around this one to destroy it, and, say the Spelljammer actually holds their movement with the ship, to where when this one's coming at them, they maneuver below or something, and then everybody fires off like spells and cannons and stuff at the same time to fight. I think it makes it just very fun, knowing that this ship combat has its own distinct nature that's different than regular ship combat.
Yeah, I will say, I think a lot of this lends itself well to theater of the mind, where you don't have to worry about specific positioning, and they even specify with like a spell jamming ship. There's no need to, like, if you're only facing one side of the ship towards the other ship, but there's weapons on the other side of your ship too. You don't have to worry about like, oh, well, those wouldn't technically be able to hit. You're able to, position the ship every single time so that all the weapons can hit.
I honestly would put a rule in where, hey, we probably can't, actually put all of this out on a map. If we are in an encounter where that's not really possible, I'll explain it to the as well as I can, and then we'll almost turn-based put all the minis out, and you tell me who you're aiming at, and I'll describe the situation well and have it set up as well as possible. Like, always have your ship on the board, but maybe enemy ships are a little more complicated, so we use visual aids to make that easier.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting task to figure out how we're gonna work around it, but not they keep it simple enough to where I don't feel like any party would get too overly confused about who's doing what and how does this work.
All right, so I want to fly through the backgrounds and the spells really quick, because We get a couple of new backgrounds, one of them being the Wild Spacer. Is that the one?
Yes, Wild Spacer.
So the Wild Spacer is basically a space pirate. Not too much to say about it. As we discussed in the one D&D episode last week, new backgrounds are starting with feats, and granted, what we can expect in the future is a lot of create your own backgrounds. What we're getting now are some little sample backgrounds. The Wild Spacer, space pirate, gets the tough feat to start out with, and you're basically someone who has lived in wild space as a vagabond for quite some time.
Additionally, they do have an extra feature where they've learned how to adapt to zero gravity, so being weightless doesn't give you disadvantage on any of your melee attack rolls like it would for a normal character. So
Perfect.
It's interesting that that's tied in here. I'd almost say that might be like, if you're not a wild spacer in your background, I might say, as the adventure goes on, we might extend that courtesy to
maybe
other
you get
experience.
proficiency or something
Yeah.
in wild space combat if it comes up. Yeah, I agree. Maybe as your experience goes on, you all get that ability.
Yeah, I mean, you're not usually going to be weightless in most of your combat situations anyway, because gravity does function within the range
But
of your
say you do
Spelljammer.
get thrown into space against like a big bad who can fly out there.
Yeah. Everyone has to get into their fish suit and fly off, or
Exactly.
whatever the case may be. That might help.
Okay, so at this point, we kind of know that there's these different settings now, right? So we have the Forgotten Realms, we have things like Eberron, we have Spelljammer, right? It's sort of different settings, although Spelljammer does kind of tie into everything with the wild space.
Yeah,
Astral
more or
Sea
less, kind of.
sort of vibe. Is there any restrictions as it goes in the book of what you can or cannot play here? Because I know at our table we have our own rules per se, but do we have to use one of these space backgrounds as it goes to play into Spelljammer?
No, of course not.
Absolutely not, dude.
Okay.
They give you so much, and I'll explain more when we talk about the Rock of Brawl, which is provided here in the book. But no, absolutely not. The Wild Spacer is one of them, and that's basically you're a space pirate. Another one is the Astral Wanderer?
Astral Drifter.
Astral Drifter.
Ooh.
So you have spent an enormous amount of time in the astral sea, whether that's because you found yourself teleported or thrown out there some time ago, whether your bag of holding got sucked into your
You put a bag of holding in another bag
yeah,
of
you
holding.
put your two bag of holding.
The astral
You
sea.
got sucked into the astral sea. You've been floating out there for a century or two. You are much older than you appear to be. You look 30, but you're actually 330.
Yeah, it says roll. You are 20d6 years older than you look because you spent that much time drifting in the astral sea.
Oh my gosh.
So you could be, a maximum of 120 years older than you believe. I'd say you can describe any amount of time. At
Sure.
this point, you've lost some emotions or you're just not very good in social situations. But you start out with the Magic Initiate feat, though it clarifies you can only use spells from the Cleric spell list, which I'm not a huge fan of, personally, just because it says you met like a dead god while you were... or you happened to run across the corpse of a dead god while you were floating through the astral sea.
Not even just a dead god, but like a divine contact of some
Okay,
kind.
so
like,
maybe you floated across Elysium.
Yeah, or it says you've run into any number of wandering deities, which all of the outer planes exist within the astral sea. So any of those places, including the abyss, hell, all of that, it's apparently exists in this space. So you could run into any god going wherever they're supposed to go. They give you like a list of Corellin, Timera, Istis, blah 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 blah, tons of different gods that you can use.
So I know, I think it's in the back of the player handbook or maybe the Dungeon Master's Guide where it actually elaborates on the different pantheon of gods. Is it a possibility or a setup in Spelljammer that you could run into like, the Roman or Greek gods out in Spelljammer space?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, if you go far, the way that I'm picturing it, and they really don't, none of this is set in stone in the book, and that's one of my criticisms of it when we get
we'll
there.
get there. We'll
is
get
that
there.
It's kind of vague with a lot of this stuff, but my personal imagination is like, if you go far enough through the astral sea, or like you find what they call them color pools that like teleport you to different planes, if like you go through the right wormhole, basically you may end up in like a different space and time or dimension or whatever,
A place that operates on different physics or something like that.
Yeah.
All very interesting stuff. And yes, this astral drifter has lived in this area for quite some time. Yeah, they only let you choose from the cleric spell list. I would almost just say, do whatever you want. You've been out here. Maybe you just had time to practice while you were here. Choose from the wizard spell list. You had so much time. Why would you not know? Why would you not learn a little bit of magic in said time?
Yeah,
or you came across an ancient artifact that granted you some power. I don't know. You've been drifting out here for like 2 centuries.
Yeah, if we're giving feats to these two backgrounds, at least in the meantime, before one D&D becomes official material, yeah, you got to find something to do with the rest of the players who don't get a feat from their background.
You just give them one at level 1.
Yeah, so I'd say just customize it however you want.
Exactly. Furthermore, we go on to the section with all the ships, correct?
Well, we have to talk about races, Seth.
Oh,
in the
my
character
bad, my
options.
bad. We definitely have to talk about all the races. We do get a number of different racial options here. My favorite being the GIF. I know there's so much more before that, but I want to talk about the GIF because I think they're the best addition in this book. GIF are hippo people, or people that look like hippos. They say they're humanoids who happen to resemble hippos in the actual the actual guide.
What's probably the number one thing that I hate in this book, and it's just me being petty. At the end of the flavor section where they talk about the GIF and all of their lore, they say GIF are split into 2 camps considering how their name is pronounced. Half of them say it with a hard G, half with a soft G.
That's so funny.
Oh my! Is that in the book?
I hate it.
This is in the book.
GIF or
they
GIF.
can't agree if they're GIF or GIF.
So funny.
And it's spelled GIFF with 2 Fs. So in my mind, that's easily GIF.
GIF, easily.
But
easily.
I guess if I ran into a GIF who disagreed, he might kill me. So
Yeah. GIF are also, as well as being hippo people, they are specialists with firearms, giving us rules and everything that everything we need to actually wield firearms. Very cool. Love it. Now, it does, I believe, say, go ahead.
well, what's crazy about the firearms mastery for the GIF and what makes them almost seem like the quintessential class here. I mean, there's nothing that specifies you have to use firearms while you're in space, but I'm imagining there's got to be like laser guns and shit like that. They have proficiency with all firearms and ignore the loading property of any firearm. In addition, attacking at long range with a firearm doesn't impose disadvantage on your attack roll. So they have the gunner feat, sharpshooter, and firearm proficiency all rolled into one feature, and GIF all have that, which is crazy. The only thing that sharpshooter doesn't give them, or that
is the minus 10 ability.
Yeah,
or plus 10 ability.
Yeah, the plus 10 damage on your rolls for a minus 5 to your attack roll. That's still good enough to take sharpshooter for, in my opinion. But it's interesting that they have so much utility there with firearms.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the GIF. They're the quintessential like firearms enthusiasts, and I like them a lot. We have the what order are they in, Zach? Astral elves first.
Yeah,
they're elves in space. We don't need to go over anything else. They can do the bonus action teleport that the other elves can now do. Love it.
I'll say I do like their design, and I've been thinking about an astral elf, just depending on what the rest of our party goes, because they seem like a good standard character option to balance out the party. Say if everyone says I want to be an auto gnome, then we might need some order. Someone to ground us. Speaking of auto gnomes,
I was about to say speaking of auto gnomes, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, they're small robots basically. So you imagine a rock gnome has created a robot in its image. That's what the auto gnomes are. So they're little robots created by gnomes to look like gnomes. For one reason or another, they've been separated from their master, and so they go off and go on adventures. This creature is a construct, and that's something that's been happening with a lot of the races since I believe they had the same thing in Monsters of the Multiverse, where your creature type can now be different than humanoid. So it's interesting. They state that they're a construct. They get a plus, or they have AC of 13 plus Dex mod automatically. They get a special feature. They can add a D4 to a D20 roll. a number of times equal to their proficiency bonus. They can be healed even though they're constructs. So spells like Cure Wounds, Healing Word, Mass Cure Wounds, Mass Healing Word, and Spare the Dying all work on them. But other healing spells that specify they don't work on constructs do not. So I believe Heal would be included there and a couple other things.
And I believe you can use Mending, correct? And they can expend a hit dice to regain health.
That's correct. Yep.
Oh.
And then they have resistance to poison, immunity to disease, and their sentries rest much like a Warforged. And they get 2 tool proficiencies of their choice, which is neat.
Auto gnomes, super cool. Like them a lot. They're basically like gnome versions of Warforged. We still don't have Warforged anywhere other than in Eberron, and I get it. I mean, hopefully we have them at some point, but yeah, we've got auto gnomes, which are very interesting.
Yeah, and they're so cute, honestly.
Yeah, they are.
I don't love, like, you tell me verbally, yeah, it's like a robot, but it's small and
You
it
can
looks
play
like
one
a
of
gnome.
the little red robots from Sonic the Hedgehog. That's how I imagine them.
No.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at this artwork, it does enough for me to say, you know what, if no one's going to be an auto gnome, I might think about it. Because I'm imagining, like, if you think about the quintessential, spacefaring party, someone's got to be R2-D2.
Someone's got to be a robot.
Yeah.
Someone's got to be Robo from Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, or Robo from. I mean, honestly, if we're doing Spelljammer, Warforged have to be on the table.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
maybe a big auto gnome. Instead.
I have a million ideas now for Spelljammer. The problem is, now that we have an additional construct, it's making me think about how much fun I had playing Warforged, and I kind of just want to be an astral drifting Warforged, and my entire goal for the campaign is to find my creator. Like, that would be so. It's so classic.
Glitch
it's
comes
simple.
back.
Oh, don't tempt me, Zach. Don't tempt me. We'll bring him back. We'll bring back old characters.
So, moving on from that, what's the next race in the book?
GIF, which we've already talked about. Next is the Hadazee.
Yeah, monkey people. So you're basically like a flying squirrel monkey, and they are very interesting. You're a monkey, but you've got like little wing flaps attached to your hand and feet.
That's so weird.
Why did you look at that with surprise? We literally just talked about this
You said
5 minutes
you said
ago.
Squirrel though, and I was like, well, I thought they were monkey people.
They're
Are they squirrel people
flying.
too?
They're like flying squirrel monk people. That's right. What I'm saying is they have the flaps attached to their hands and feet. They're monkeys.
Oh,
I
thought
they've
this
got
was a totally
little
different thing.
webbed
With skin
connections
flaps.
between their hands
Oh,
and their
that's
feet.
so weird. I
that
don't
they
like
extend
that.
like a glider.
Oh, that's
so,
creepy.
Honestly, I love these. I'm surprised that you hate them so much. And this is the one anthropomorphic creature race that I can sort of get behind. And
Which angers me because I like all of them.
yeah, well, I'm really into these, and part of it I think is just they have sort of an established basis in like sci-fi culture. So
Yes.
like you think of Planet of the Apes,
Space chimps.
yeah, space chimps. Yeah, you think about weird experiments that exist in like the D&D world that create owl bears and monstrosities of that nature. Well, these guys are the experiment of a wizard, and in the real world we send monkeys into space as experiments. So I think thematically it works out really well.
Yeah, the idea that they were just small flying monkeys basically.
Yeah, sort of
Flying-
like a Tressum turned
Yeah.
into they evolved and were made into
Yeah, they were small flying monkeys that were experimented on by wizards, and now they've become fully grown, like mutated monkeys. Is very cool, and the fact that they've established a culture off of their homeworld, and basically they overthrew. It's very interesting lore. They overthrew the wizards that were experimenting on them, went back to their homeworld world, and created more Hadazee, and then so now they're just all over the place. In
Yeah,
space.
I mean it's very much like the plot to Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
where they they outgrew their cruel creators that made them this way, and then flew out into space. Their features are pretty awesome too. They have dexterous feet, so as a bonus action, they can use their feet to manipulate an object, open or close a door or container, or pick up or set down a tiny object.
Yes.
Which makes me think you could easily say, okay, bonus action. Everyone does this. It's not a real rule. I want to drink a healing potion. You can't use a bonus action to do it. It is a full action. Not for a Hadazee, baby. That's your
so,
one
like,
special thing.
Well, and I really like the Hadazee bard like juggling fighter. Or so where you're like literally tossing swords around and using your feet and catching them and spinning and like making attacks like with your feet and hands holding the weapons.
Yeah, say you're fighting enemies that are vulnerable to different types. I've got a long sword, a rapier, and a hammer. And if I need to, make an attack against one of them, then I'll just swap them out real quick. I'll juggle it around. That's awesome. And then they have their glide feature, which is the most confusing thing. I don't understand how to rule it, but basically every 1 foot that they fall, they can move up to 5 feet horizontally, which, if you think about it logically, makes me think that it's at no movement cost to them.
Right.
So they can theoretically, like if you jump off a high enough space, would you not be able to fly like 300 feet in a round? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Like, say you're falling from say you're falling from the sky. You say you're falling 1,000 feet. You're telling me that they can move 5,000 feet to the side while they're falling 1,000 feet, like without a movement cost?
Yeah, that's bizarre. So not sure how that works. I almost like it more as you move within the realm of your current movement,
right?
But you just have the control of falling in space, basically.
Yeah. Additionally, I believe they can halt their fall damage with a reaction.
Yep. Yeah. So imagine. I'm trying to think of a character that does this. Link from Breath of the Wild. You pull out your your paraglider at the last second and stop yourself from falling.
Believe Batman in the Batman Arkham game stops himself with his cape, right? Like,
yeah, very much like that too.
Yeah, that's how I think of it.
And then they have their Hadazee Resilience, which really they're stealing from Goliaths here. They can use a reaction to reduce damage when they take damage.
Yeah, so Hadazee, very interesting. Thrycreen? Or Plasmoids?
Plasmoids.
Yes. These are slime ooze people. You are quite literally an ooze. You're not a humanoid. I love the concept of Plasmoids. I think they're very interesting. They're basically oozes with personalities and brains, and they can think for themselves and cast spells and stuff. Love it. Fun. Very quintessential sci-fi race, I would say.
Yeah, and so their features are very interesting. They can squeeze through a space as narrow as 1 inch wide, provided they are wearing and carrying nothing, and they have advantage on ability checks to made to initiate or escape a grapple.
Very useful.
They can hold their breath for up to an hour. They have resistance to acid and poison damage. Obviously, that makes sense. But then also they can shape themselves. So they can, basically, a plasmoid does not exist. It's not like a humanoid type creature. All plasmoids are, you know how water fills up the space that it's inside. They don't have like a typical shape that they take. They just make a humanoid shape with like arms and legs to fit in when they're dealing with humanoids. So that's sort of their situation. You can make your shape however you want, more or less. Like you could become a limbless blob, and then you can, reshape into a humanoid form. The only catch there is you have to, if you're holding things, for example, your adventuring gear,
right,
you have to, be in a shape that can still hold those things.
Do you think you could suck it? Can you suck it into your form? Maybe not.
I mean, probably, yeah, like a gelatinous cube, and then you reform with all your stuff. Yeah, probably. You just wouldn't be able to fit through like a tiny space like that.
Right.
Additionally, as a bonus action, you can extrude a pseudopod that's up to 6 inches wide and 10 feet long, or reabsorb it into your body. You can use this to manipulate an object, and all that jazz that the Hadazee does. The Plasmoid can do it too, but they don't have the restriction of using a foot for it. So, for instance, I can't imagine a world that a Hadazee is walking on 1 foot. But the Plasmoid doesn't need to worry about that. They just grow an extra arm to do the thing they need to do while they're still fighting and doing whatever else. The one caveat there is it can't attack, activate magic items, or lift more than 10 pounds.
Right. So I think the Plasmoids are super cool, and we're left with one more additional race, correct?
Yes, Bugmen.
Thrycreen. They have 4 limbs. They're bug people, and they have a camouflage ability. All super cool, awesome stuff to add into your campaign. And again, I think bug people are kind of necessary for this kind of setting. I love the idea of them. I love what they represent. And they communicate, I believe, instead of using their mandibles, because their language is very hard to copy, to mimic. So if you don't know how to speak bug, they communicate through telepathy.
Yeah, which this, I think it's... Originally, I thought, well, I don't want to only communicate through telepathy with all my other players. But now that I think about it, just imagine the funny role-playing opportunities for, say, you pass through an anti-magic field or something, and then all of a sudden Gromulus is trying to like play charades to get everyone to understand the important information that he has.
Yeah.
And he's making weird shapes with his antennas, and he's going but like you just can't understand what he's trying to say. I feel like that's actually really cool.
No, I like that.
And real fun.
I love all of these races. They're all really scary.
Yeah.
Like they really make me like, oh, how do they look? This is
They're weird space races.
I'm excited to see how they fit into a party where there's an ordinary like human or a dwarf or something, just to see how they interact with one another as roleplay. I think it'd be interesting.
All right, I think we're good. We've spent a long time on the race section. What I want to get into is the rest of the book, because what I have to say is I've read a lot of D&D books at this point. At least skimmed a lot of D&D books, and what we get in the rest of this doesn't so much provide a good bit of lore or world building for a DM to build a campaign off of, but more provides a small setting for you to take your Spelljammer campaign to, a small or one town basically in space, and then 16 designs for ships. I am over the moon with the designs for the ships, the abilities they have. I think they're cool. They're all very unique to one another, and they all have very cool lore for the people who are actually for the Spelljammers that are piloting them. But I didn't want 32 pages of this book to be taken up by boats.
Yeah, well, and so that's only a problem when there's only 64 pages in the whole book. So there's a lot of really cool art, and the
art
maps,
in these books is beautiful
for each of the ships. And honestly, the mental imagery of that alone is really cool. I'm personally a big fan of the Damselfly ship. But
I love that one.
And I love that there are like specific ships for different like factions, like Mind Flayers. Obviously, they ride around in their nautiloids, and each ship has different ways that it may land. So, like a lot of the ships are just big boats in space. So obviously, you can't land it on the ground. You got to find a body of water if you want to land it on a planet.
Right.
But then some do have legs that you can land on. There's just a ton of cool options there. But
yes, and that's great. I'm so glad we have all of these options, because in a setting like this, that when you go to space, especially in like Star Wars, Star Trek, all of those things, every ship is different. So
yeah, and they all have a personality.
Exactly.
Like, you think of like Han Solo. Han Solo is only cool because he has this,
the Millennium Falcon,
which has a personality of its own. Almost at this, I mean, even in Solo, they sort of made it canon that it has a personality.
Yeah. Boba Fett has Slave One, like one of the coolest ships in Star Wars.
Yeah, so it's quintessential that we have this information, but when you call this book the Astral Adventurer's Guide, I expect a guide to include like some notable places, sort of what...
Give me some DM material to work with.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, for example, tells you a little bit about every place that you'll run into on the Sword
Storm King's
Coast.
Thunder gives you a map and just little paragraphs on all these places. I'm not asking you to build out 40 different planets that I can go visit, but give me 40 different locations I can take my characters to, or like give me some kind of world building, because what they provide me is a map that shows all of these different wild spaces and a little bit of information on 2 of them.
Exactly. And so even they don't even provide enough material, like, random tables to like build your own planets. There's none of that. They say, I don't know, figure it out. But even if they wanted to take like a lore agnostic space and just say, well, we don't need to define, or we don't want to define what all the planets in your wild space system look like. If they don't want to do that, that's fine. But we need something, because really all that's provided here is really cool rules for flying through space and getting into space combat. But there's not a lot in terms of like planet hopping or like what you might find in space. Obviously, Boo's Astral Menagerie includes monsters, but even most of those, they're the things that exist in space. Like what exists on other planets.
And we get descriptions on certain versions of those monsters where it's like, hey, these come from a planet of all these, and like it looks kind of like are inhabiting from their home world. It'll give us like little tiny like bits like that, but I don't know anything about their home world. I don't know anything about like how these came to be or what they look like. I mean, I know what they look like, but I don't really know why or how to design a planet where they would even come from. Like, okay, you're telling me these are plant creatures from a plant planet. Okay, cool.
Right.
Like, it's a planet with a bunch of green. I've seen those before.
Yeah, and so as a DM, you do have the ability to say, well, okay, I'm going to use the other things from, the Monster Manual or Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. I say, okay, we're going to an ice planet, so there's going to be Ramirez, and there's going to be ice mephits, and, there are things that you can pull from, but I just want a little bit more like, glooby glorpy alien things, which there's not that much of.
Except in our one specific space station that we basically get, the Rock of Brawl. I think the Rock of Brawl is amazing, honestly, as a setting. It's your Waterdeep of space. The Rock of Brawl is... I'm not going to give all the lore tidbits because I think if you're a player going to the Rock of Brawl for the first time, I don't want you to know that. I think that discovering the Rock of Brawl for yourself for the first time is super fun and super interesting, but it's a part of an asteroid floating through space with a town built on either side of it. So because of the way gravity works, the top side has its own gravity, the bottom side has its own gravity. The bottom side is where the whole government and associated
like the military pretty much
more or less located. In the top side, the military on the bottom, and on the top is a very large expansive city. I think it goes about a mile or two wide, it says. So it's a big expansive city. It's super cool. And what I appreciate about what they did put in the book is they describe all of the bare bones what you need to operate in the Rock of Brawl. What I don't like is it's only like 4 pages long, and they give you a map of the entire thing. And based on what I read in the Astral Adventurer's Guide, I could spend maybe a session on the Rock of Brawl. And this is literally a place where a 1 to 5 should be able to take place.
Yeah, 100%. And so I will agree with you. It's super bare bones. But on the other hand, if they're not going to, include the adventure in this singular book, I think only 5 pages is around what we need. One of my criticisms of some of the other materials we got, for example, Eberron, Rising from the Last War, a good quarter or a third of that book is spent just fleshing out Sharn, one city in Eberron, and it's just so much information. I tried running a campaign for you guys in Sharn, and all of my prep was spent just reading and reminding myself, okay, what are all the different places? Let me make sure that I represent this because it's awesome. It's awesome everything that they've set up there, but I think as a DM you have to realize when sometimes it's just TMI, let me figure it out. My
rebuttal to that is if you're going to give me 4 pages on this, or if you're only going to give me one location in this whole book, if you're not going to give me, grounds for creating planets, or at least 3 or 4 other planets that I could possibly take them into, or descriptions of 3 or 4 other wild spaces we could go to, then give me more on the one location you're going to give me.
100%. And so, full disclosure, none of us have fully read through Light of Xerxes. Seth, you've done some skimming and looked through a lot of the base details, and to my understanding, they don't have what we're looking for in there either.
No. So what we have in Light of Xerxes, which we can go ahead and talk about that because the book ends, or the Astral Adventurer's Guide ends with the Rock of Brawl. What we have in Light of Xerxes is very interesting. Your players are on their homeworld, a big event ends up happening, and they need to leave in order to save their homeworld. That's kind of our shtick for what's going on. The Light of Xerxes is, I think, set up in a very, very creative and good way where it is meant to be played in 12 sessions. They say that from the get-go. 12 sessions you should be spending in this campaign. Obviously, as a DM, you can change whatever you want, add sessions here or there, which, I assume that, knowing our party, we'll go in and out of a couple of things. I'll end up coming up with some creative idea that we'll spend a session on. So, realistically, maybe 15, 16 sessions you'll spend on the Light of Xerxes, and that's totally cool. And I love the actual outline of the campaign, but once again, the Rock of Brawl is a central location in there. You spend multiple sessions in space flying around, running into space encounters, and they send you a couple of notable small locations, and then we get into Xerxes space, which is another separate wild space with its own notable locations as well. And I believe Doom space is mentioned and used as well. So we do go between the 3 wild spaces, and we get some descriptions for them. But, again, there's not enough world. There's not a whole lot of world building outside of these couple of locations. Like we know how we're gonna get there. We're gonna run into a lot of space encounters. Again, we are going to just have a lot of space encounters, though.
Yeah, and to be fair, they have fleshed out, a lot of the things that you can run into in space. There's not only other spell jamming ships that you'll run into, but like the wildlife up there. It's all very like oddly aquatic. So like
yes.
You're going to be running into space whales and space sharks and like just a bunch of to fit the theme of you're all in flying space boats. So what else to run into but like a bunch of weird nautical things. They also have lunar dragons and solar dragons, which are dope. I love the idea of that. I haven't looked into them at all because I want to be surprised.
Your whimsical clown-like vampirates.
Space clowns as well.
Oh yeah, the space clowns.
And then there's vampirates as well.
All whimsical and funny stuff you would see in a movie.
Yeah,
or like a cartoon.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm super interested to actually jump into it when we do. But again, just hoping that this isn't the last we get of Spelljammer in this edition, or even at the start of 1 D&D if they want to release additional materials to help flesh out a full campaign. I feel like we're only scratching the surface here, and Light of Xerxes is only a 5 to 8 campaign.
It's a 4. Or yeah. It is a 5 to 8. No, you're right. I'm stupid.
So basically, I'm saying I don't think that this alone justifies buying, like, they've got a ton of Spelljammer miniatures releasing, and it doesn't justify paying all that extra up front if we're only going to get 12 sessions out of it.
Yeah, and what I will say, I didn't even get to finish mentioning the way they lay out the chapters. They begin with an excerpt describing what happened in the last session, and they end with a already written like cliffhanger in mind. So the way I kind of already set my sessions up in my head is we're going to end here. This is where I want to end. And I write an excerpt from what happened last session. So they did my job for me by being like, this happened last session, and this is what's going to happen next. It does make it feel a little railroady, but I would say that it's more like a branching story that always comes back to a point. Like
any campaign would.
Yeah, like any campaign normally is. They give you they actually write in really good options for winning and losing encounters. So instead of making it always like you losing an encounter is going to end up with a TPK, if you lose an encounter, here's what happens.
That's cool.
That is already written in a lot of the encounters you run in. Not everyone. Some encounters are going to be deadly, of course, but they actually, they write into there, okay, if the characters are on the ropes and like they lose this encounter, here's the losing condition. And if they win, here's the winning condition. Go down these two paths, come back to a point at the end. So very interesting, right? I think it ends up making for a very good experience where, the story is written by you guys, but also there is some what is it?
Branching paths.
Yeah, there's like some branching paths that go along with it.
And ultimately, you are beholden to the players if we really stray off the critical path. Like, I mean,
I can't tell you not to do it.
Yeah, as a DM, I'm sure you'll find your way back to what you were trying to get to. But the only thing that's keeping us on rails is our unwillingness to experiment.
Yeah, I think Light of Xerxes is a well-written little module to go with Spelljammer. Again, it's not long enough for me to run a whole campaign in, and do we really warrant this entire Spelljammer box set if we're not going to spend a little more time here? Like, is this all we're going to get for 5th edition /1 D&D Spelljammer, or are we going to get another supplement to go with it? Because as it is right now, when I run this Spelljammer campaign for you guys next year, I'm going to be using 2nd edition material to supplement, as well as some fan-made 5e material on the side.
Yeah, and so, if anything, I will say there's probably a place for, like, including Spelljammer elements in non-Spelljammer campaigns.
Right.
Like, for example, our current campaign, I imagine we're probably going to be doing some planar travel here pretty soon, and it would be cool to throw in, well, here's a dilapidated Spelljammer or Spelljamming ship that, exists from, eons ago. We unearth it, and then, we go through space to get to, whatever plane we're trying to hop to.
Like, maybe instead of being able to teleport directly to Elysium or wherever you have to go to visit, like Zariel, you can actually travel there.
Yeah, so there's definitely an opportunity for it, and there are tons of space monsters that existed before the Spelljammer package with astral dreadnoughts and what the I don't even remember what they're called, but they're like the stargazing whatever unspeakable horrors, stuff like that.
Oh god.
Yeah. So what we're given here in the Spelljammer stuff, there is Boo's Astral Menagerie the Boo's Space Menagerie. It's the monster manual for Spelljammer, and all I have to really say about it is we get some NPC stat blocks for all of the new races. Great, I love those and use them all the time, so keep giving me those wizards every time you give me a new race. Provide me with 3 or 4 stat blocks for each of them, because I'm going to need it whenever I run into a thing and you guys end up in a 1-on or you end up on a 3-on-4 fight with some GIF, and now I have some stat blocks to make them different than each other. Awesome, love it. Keep those coming. And then we have a bunch of cool space creatures, a lot of creative stuff. I don't really have anything. This is a typical monster manual. We've seen them over and over again. Monsters in the Multiverse, the original monster manual, Tome of Foes, Volos, all of those. This is the same thing for space creatures. And honestly, I don't have a lot to say about it outside of that, because I think what they give us is substance enough for these space creatures, because you can already use a lot of the stat blocks we have on in space, and now we have some typical space ones. 64 pages was plenty for me to do a whole campaign off of with space creatures.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if we really wanted to, the monster manual gives us enough. We've got mind flayers and Githzerai,
Beholders,
Githyanki.
even.
Yeah, beholders. They float through space, and what's super cute is they have big spell jamming ships in the shape of beholders, because they're so vain. They just fly around in these big balls with eye stalks.
Yeah.
And then you're flying through space and you're like, I wonder what's flying that.
Yeah.
And then, a bunch of beholders come out. That's
They
funny.
even have a really cool written beholder NPC that I'm not going to spoil for our buddy Drew here, but they have a really cool beholder written NPC in the book that is nicely fleshed out enough to where I'm like, oh, I could RP that character if I needed to.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, and I won't spoil him, but if you've got any interest, audience, you should pick up this book and flip to the back, because it is an interesting one.
I think it's super scary now, right? Because we're getting all these different things that actually occur that have been outside of our realm of possibility before, right? The Astral Sea was just like, that's the place where stuff goes. I don't know what's out there. So now we've actually done the whole bag of holding trick in our current campaign, where we sent a beholder to the Astral Sea.
I know what you're talking about.
No one's thought about what to do with that already.
I've definitely been thinking about it, and if you haven't been thinking about it, Seth, it's got to happen.
I'm just concerned that we're about to go mudding through everybody's garbage that they've thrown into the Astral Sea, or creatures that they were able to banish away. Like, are they going to be here? Do we have to fight all these guys? I don't know.
I mean, obviously the Astral Sea is like an infinite plane,
Yeah.
so you don't necessarily have to run into everything, but will you run into some random garbage that got thrown here? Absolutely.
Well, and so the whole reason why you wouldn't, like, for instance, if you wanted to live forever, why not just go to the Astral Sea? Well, the things in the Astral Sea are infinitely more dangerous than most of the things you'll find in the material plane. There's astral dreadnoughts just floating through space, whole colonies of mind flayers on ships, or like a whole armada of nautiloids filled with the mind flayers and, elder brains, an elder brain dragon fleeting, a bunch of mind flayers, Githzerai and Githyanki ships, in constant war with the mind flayers. All that shit goes on out there.
Yeah, in the Astral Sea and in Wild Space itself. Like, Wild Space is as scary as our space.
And you could easily run into, the corpses of dead gods, which also is just the most metal thing that I can imagine.
They talk about
floating out there.
They talk about
Astral
corpses of dead gods too, and how certain creatures will make their homes inside of these almost petrified corpses and make home here and like either worship or like get powers from the god that's dead here. So cool.
Yeah, awesome to bring that back. When I was running Curse of Strahd way back when, I thought, when we continue this, I want to do some planar travel. And so I looked at, there was a Planescape module also from AD&D that was, I believe it's just called Dead Gods. And like the whole idea there was, Planescape, you're hopping through different planes, mostly through like portal travel. But you could also go to the astral plane and float around like you would. So the whole crux of that campaign was something dealing with one of those dead gods. So I like that they're bringing it back for Spelljammer. If we don't get a Planescape supplement, it's smelling like with one D&D on the horizon, we're probably not going to get Planescape, which that was my my one wish list setting that I really wanted to see come back, but maybe next time.
I would rather more material for all the stuff we're already getting. We're about to get Dragonlance at the end of this year. If I would rather more material in these other settings, specific campaigns written for them, as opposed to more and more settings and more just separate things. I want more material for Spelljammer, for Forgotten Realms, for Dragonlance, for Eberron.
For Greyhawk. The Ghosts of Saltmarsh takes place in Greyhawk, and there's not a setting book for 5e for that whole setting. Everything you get for Greyhawk exists in Ghosts of Saltmarsh.
Exactly.
It's so weird.
So, that's about all I have to say on it. Wrapping it up, Spelljammer is, I believe, a fine book. I think for the price, it's worth it. Like what, $70 at max for all of these, and I even got it for like $45 on Amazon whenever it came out.
Yeah, I pre-ordered it. I paid like $40 on Amazon.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not a bad price. But you are paying for what, or you get what you pay for. So these are 3 separate books in name, but they could easily be one. It's pretty much an average size D&D book.
It's
not
DM
bigger
screen.
than like Eberron. So
You get a DM screen to go with it too. You realistically have everything that you need to run a short Spelljammer campaign in one place, but I don't think with the material they've given you that without a ton of work on the DM's part, you could use this to run a full campaign. Likewise, I said I'm going to run a full Spelljammer campaign, probably will not go to level 20 based on the material we have, and I'm going to be using a lot of outside resources from other Spelljammer writers that aren't official. So, if that's your jam and you want to mess around in space, I think this is a perfect supplement. It gives you really good rules, really good racial abilities, really good backgrounds, and a couple of cool locations, as well as a 5 to 8 that you can run. But if you are looking to get this for running an entire Spelljammer campaign, this isn't going to be enough.
yeah, I will say, if you're the kind of player like we are, and you really want to have all those character options, the races are great. I love all of them.
Yeah.
So that is worth the price of admission, and you get some fun info about space travel and all that. So I give this an average recommendation. If D&D in space sounds like your jam, this isn't going to give you everything you need, but it's a solid package for what it is.
Do we need to provide a grade to it?
I'll give my grade. I'd say, so if we're just taking each book individually, I have no rating for Light of Xerxes, but Boo's Astral Menagerie and the Astral Adventurer's Guide, I'd say each of them get about a B. So the whole package together would be a B.
I would say for Light of Xerxes, based on my skimming and what I've heard of it so far, is a very fun campaign, and I would like to see some other campaigns go the route of the way they've organized this one. I'm going to give that a B+, because I say Curse of Strahd is kind of that A range where it is still arranged a little bit weird, but it's got the story beats and the one like early level to late level. This isn't long enough for me to think that like by the end of it you're going to have crazy emotional stakes while you'll spend 12 sessions in this area. You need some build up and some post content in order for it to be very emotionally heavy and like for it to provide that extra oomph that a campaign would have. So I'd give it a B+. And then both of the other books we get, it's hard for me because I want to give the Adventurer's Guide like a C+, just because it's missing everything that I can write a very good campaign just based on a bunch of one paragraph different area descriptions. I think I can make a good campaign out of that, but I don't even have that to go off of. Space combat I'll have no problem writing. They provide enough stat blocks and descriptions that I can make a bunch of space encounters happen, but I'm sure you guys aren't flying to space just to dogfight a bunch of different creatures. Like, you're not here just to kill a bunch of Illithid and fight some space clowns. You're here to go through an adventure.
Right.
And there's not a lot of stuff outside of the Rock of Brawl and Zerix's base to communicate with other creatures. So I'm going to give, that's going to put me at like a C+ on that. And the monster manual is just like another like B monster manual. Like it's got enough. Like I don't have any complaints about it, but there's nothing like specifically that sticks out as amazing to me. So overall, like a B, B-.
I think overall, I'm excited to hear about all this stuff. I really, really like the classes. I like all the content it's offering as far as space travel, the setting information it gives you for the actual astral sea, and the explanation of these different wild spaces. I think it's very cool content. To be honest, and I've been avoiding a lot of this stuff for fear of spoilers.
Yeah, you haven't like read it. You don't even have to give a letter grade if you don't want.
I'll refrain from a grade, but I will say I was really hoping to hear about some cool planets today. Beyond just the one rock we had mentioned. I'm a little disappointed, but I don't want that to negatively affect this because I am beyond stoked, like I'm sure a lot of other players are, to play in the Spelljammer setting. So I hope it goes well. I'm very excited for the campaign, but I'm interested to see where it goes.
Also, the one last thing, I really hate that they really chickened out on giving us like a book that's not the DMG from way back when with those optional gun rules. We're in outer space. Just say that lasers exist and give me better stats and a reasonable weapon that someone could use and how laser guns work and make it balanced. It doesn't suit me from the DMG if we were to play with these sorts of things in a full campaign. I hope that we do some effective homebrew to make it better. But just give me something. We're in space, goddammit. We need lasers.
One of the supplemental materials, this isn't official, this is fan-made for 5e, does provide laser gun rules and stuff. So whatever it says, I haven't read through it all yet because it's 306 pages and it's smaller font than the regular books.
Dang.
I will be going through that, though, and we will use it. So
fuck yeah.
That way we can have some laser guns. Because if we're going to play in a sci-fi setting, we're going to follow through with it, right?
Oh my gosh, I want to be a Jedi so bad.
You can be a psionic fighter. Go ahead.
I'm really thinking, but I also need like a little, sidearm laser gun because I can't not have a laser gun in space.
Yeah. So overall, guys, that is Spelljammer. That's what you can expect from it. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Table Talk Friday. Very important note, if you made it this far in the episode, you must like the show by now, right? It's been an hour and 12 minutes. You have to like it. So at that point, you may as well go on to patreon.com/tabletalkfriday and check out our different tiers. You can get a bonus post show that we record after every episode. You can get the episodes a week early. That's right, a week early. There's a whole other episode waiting for you on the other side of patreon.com/tabletalkfriday right now. So if you go over there, check out what we've got to go. And even if you're just tossing $5 in the pot, thank you so much for supporting the show. It means a lot to us and lets us do what we do. If you'd like to talk to us or send us any messages, you can find us at tabletalkfriday@gmail.com. You can send us your questions, comments, concerns, anything in the D&D realm. You can tell us all about your thoughts on Spelljammer and what supplements I should be using for running a Spelljammer campaign, because I'm going to need it based on the grade I just gave the book. Outside of that, you can find us on TikTok at TableTalk Friday, on Twitter at TableTalk Friday, and YouTube at TableTalk Friday. And with that, can I get my best friend, the space clown, to take me out?
Oh, it is I, the Space Clown. I'm Spacey the Space Clown. I'm glad you remembered my name, Seth, but I just told all the folks there that's what my name is. Nothing too scary about a space clown. I haven't even read my own stat block, so I don't know what I do, but I'm a clown. I'm in space. Maybe I'm like the movie It, or maybe I'm like a friendly space clown. Who's to tell? You gotta buy the book. Be sure to buy the book to find out. Hey,